We seem to have a fine group assembled here, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. So let's start with the roll call. So I don't have all the members' names in front of me. Members of the committee, oh, we're right here. Member Mooney, present. Member Solomon, no. Member Kyle, present. Member Bergman, present. And then the other members are not present. So we have a quorum. So the first thing I'd like to do is we have the privilege of having our mayor here tonight. And so we're grateful to have her here and participating. And so just like to give her the opportunity to say a few words.
So thank you for including me. This is a very popular board. I get a lot of emails around feedback related items, and I really appreciate how engaged you all are. And happy to be here at this meeting. I'll probably be in a couple meetings as we go forward and really start to marry what we have the city has the capacity to do, and what we all want to see as a community. And what does that look like? What does that conversation look like? So thank you to those who are serving on the BPAC. Appreciate your energy and commitment, and for all of you who are here just because you're super interested. So with that, I will turn it back over and look forward to a really productive meeting.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight, and I'm going to have you had a chance to look at the people who are logged in and any sense of that? This could get a lot. 15. All right, so maybe I should up it to the end. You may have heard recently that there have been some issues at various meetings in Marin and elsewhere, where there have been some hate speech and a lot of disruption, and we're trying to avoid having any kind of incident like that. Hopefully it's a non-issue, but I'm just going to read a statement that was presented at the council meeting the other night. Public participation is important to the council and the city, and we want to keep the current hybrid format, in-person and virtual commenters, in place. But there are many municipalities, including ones in Marin, that have reverted to in-person only. One of the reasons is the hate speech Zoom bombers who are targeting government meetings. Here in San Rafael, we strongly denounce hate speech and do not tolerate disruptive behavior in our meetings. We pride ourselves on the rich diversity of our residents and are committed to creating a culture of belonging where members of our community feel included, safe, and respected. We ask for members of the public to refrain from making disrespectful and hateful comments. As a reminder, comments must be on matters within the jurisdiction of the city of San Rafael and related to the agenda item. So I just want to say that in preface to the next item on the agenda is for public comments not on the agenda, which typically goes now. And we're going to push that to the end of the meeting. So I apologize for anyone who's here to present any comments to items not on the agenda. Also, given the number of people here tonight, we'd like to, we're going to have a 2-minute time limit on public comments. So hopefully someone can be the timekeeper on that. We just want to make sure we can get through everything and get out of here at a reasonable time. And you're more than welcome to submit any comments in writing if there's anything in addition that people want to submit. So apologies for any inconvenience. And next item on the agenda, North-South Greenway. I guess that would be Bill. You sure has anything to report?
Sure. So this is a long-standing item that we have. The idea is we have an ad hoc committee that looks at everything that's happening in the North-South Greenways. That's Ann and I currently are doing that. And the idea is to present things that are going on all throughout the Greenway in Marin and see San Rafael's place in that and how it should be well built. So I will start with our updates from the south and moving north of what's happening on the Greenway. Again, just like the last few months, there's been plenty of positive progress. The Golden Gate Bridge District is planning to repave Alexander Avenue in fiscal year 24-25, thanks to advocacy from a number of groups, especially MCBC. They've committed to evaluating bike ped improvements in their repaving of the road rather than simply repaving in their current configuration. They're doing a survey now, and an engineering firm will be retained in the near future to do that work. In Sausalito, there's a few different things. In July, the city council voted to initiate a study to evaluate alternatives for the segment of Ridgeway between Golden Gate Market and Princess Street in order to provide bike lanes there. The planning study has not yet started and is expected to take about 6 months when it starts. The Bay Trail is developing a prioritized list of outstanding gaps in the whole 500-mile system around the Bay Trail. As part of that, they evaluated segments that they consider complete. And if they no longer met the Bay Trail guidelines, they recategorized them as a gap. And so this applies to the entirety of Bridgeway and Sausalito, which is now considered an incomplete Bay Trail. So that means it will be eligible for a grant program funded through RM3. That same project identified 2 very highly ranked gaps that are in San Rafael, which is very exciting for the city, but that's not part of the North-South Greenway, so I won't talk about it right now. But I was excited about that. In Larkspur, the city council just agreed to advance the construction of a 900-foot segment of Class 1 path along Redwood Highway between the south landings of the new Cortadera Creek Bridge and the US 101 pedestrian overcrossing, connecting to Lucky Drive. Construction is slated to begin in November on that. In San Rafael, $700,000 for planning and design of the San Rafael connection at Puerto Suelo Hill was included in the SMART budget, thanks to the leadership of Mayor Kate and Supervisor Sackett, both who serve on the SMART board. Thank you for that. And then construction has begun on the SMART pathway segment between McGinnis Parkway and Smith Ranch Road, where riders now have to travel on Redwood Highway. They will be on a nice path there. I rode over to look at it. It looks like a construction zone, but I was happy to see that. And it's supposed to be completed in early 2024. And then finally in Novato, for those that have been following my personal commute, the slide on Redwood Boulevard north of Atherton Avenue has been repaired to permit bicycle travel. Immediately after that was repaired, there was a Caltrans maintenance project that closed the San Antonio Creek undercrossing. So then for another 6 weeks, I still couldn't get through that way, but that is now done. And it is now very much open, and the North-South Greenway is complete for that section. So that's all my updates now, all good stuff.
Thank you. Lots of good stuff happening on the North-South Greenway. Next item, fiscal year 23-24 goals and work plan. So lots happening here, and first going to start with a presentation from staff, and then we'll have some discussion after that. So I'll turn this over to staff.
It's not sharing. No, yeah.
Let me me
No.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For tonight's presentation, we have April Miller, our Director of Public Works, Nat Van, our traffic engineer, and me, Joanna Butler, Senior Civil Engineer for Public Works Department. We'll be presenting on our fiscal year 23-24 work plan today, which was our work plan was developed to be in alignment with the City Council adopted city goals and objectives for fiscal year 23-24, 24-25. We'll be focusing on goal D for public assets this evening, which is to improve and preserve. Public assets by maintaining operations of our core infrastructure and our ongoing services, which includes road, parks, and storm drain maintenance, providing safe transportation options, including biking, walking, and transit, and maintenance of traffic signals, streetlights, and building maintenance. This is an overview of the goals and objectives in goal D, public assets. This is an overview of all of the
goals that we have, in addition to the associated policy areas which are achieved with these objectives. With our capital improvement program, our goal is to evaluate and prioritize annually. And these are the categories that are covered in our CIP program. It includes also initiating projects which are grant funded. We're also conducting a feasibility study for the canal crossing project and coordinating with all the transit agencies, authorities, and community on the transit center relocation, Vision Zero, 101, 580 multimodal project. We're also working with our consultant to develop an RFP so that we can get started on our storm drain master plan. We have a consultant on board to help us take an inventory of all the city assets, which will help as we develop our maintenance plan going forward. Our goal is also to build out our electric fleet. This is an effort to reduce greenhouse gases for the city and transitioning to electric vehicles where we can. And lastly, we also have our bike and ped master plan update, which we will be talking more about later in this presentation tonight. These goals and objectives are supported and implemented by our public works team, which includes about 55 positions across administration, maintenance, and engineering. We have about 31 employees in our maintenance division and approximately, I think, 14 in our engineering group, which includes engineers, inspectors, and technicians. And so far this year, we already have several construction projects in the queue. We've got our annual CMP replacement, phase 1 of it, which includes CMP replacements at about 4 or 5 locations. And we're hoping to get that completed before fall, by fall of this year. So right before the rainy season, and they were the high priority based on like current conditions. We also have our Rotary Manor culvert replacement project, which is looking pretty good. And we've got a photo here. This is the progress shot. But as of last week, I think all the concrete has been poured and we're looking pretty good for completion later this year. And, you know, winter, we're just being a little conservative, but we're looking pretty good pending weather. We also have our Sanquin pump station replacement project, which will be like a multi-year project, and we're anticipating completion in 2024. We're also starting our Southern Heights Fort Wright Pierce retaining wall project later this fall. And we've made some recent light improvements to Windward Way, and we're hoping to add a few more to help light up the location and improve safety and visibility. We also completed our Sun Valley Park earlier this year, June 2023. It's looking great. And we're also hoping to do some more frontage improvements along Solano for landscaping and sidewalk to help enhance the park. We recently went out to bid for Albert Park netting and fencing and a storm drain replacement project at Brymar. However, we're going through value engineering efforts now to kind of figure out the next steps for what we're going to do with these projects. For more of a planning and design level, we've also got some projects listed here, including improvements to the AJ Borough Center, development of a master plan for building maintenance and storm drain, our storm drain system to help prioritize and identify key projects that we need to complete as a city. We recently established the underground utility district for a canal earlier this year as well. We're going to be heavily working with PG&E to kind of develop the project and bring it into design and construction. This will be a multi-year project as well, and we're probably looking several years in the future. We also currently have the downtown library modernization, Pickaway Park enhancement, and several trash capture device projects in the design phase. All very exciting. The downtown library and Pickleweed Park is anticipated to go into construction next year sometime. And we also have a couple of trash capture small devices that we're looking to install pretty soon here. We recently went out for advertisement on the RFP for the Peacock Gap Playground design. So that's going to be coming forward pretty soon. And we're hoping to do construction in the next year or two. And this is just to highlight a couple of the projects that we're working on, not transportation related. In addition to that, we also have our maintenance team, which really helps to do repairs, maintain, and do minor improvement works for our facilities, our streets, vehicles, our fleet, and our parks. Especially during the rainy season, a lot of our streets and parks staff is really focusing on clearing out the storm drains to, mitigate any potential storm issues. And last, we're coming to our transportation projects. Some of the ones that we have in the that are active right now, which we're all very familiar with, is the 3rd Street Safety and Rehabilitation Project. We're looking pretty good for the 3rd Street Safety Project to be complete this fall. And for the rehabilitation project, we've got some paving, striping, and tree planting, and we're anticipating completion in winter 2024. Coming soon is our Grand Avenue Cycle Track project and the Canal Neighborhood Pavement Maintenance. Phase 2, we already did some maintenance last year, majority of the Canal neighborhood, and now we're just finishing up for additional streets. We'll also be refreshing the striping along those corridors as well. And then early in 2024, we're planning to proceed with our pavement maintenance for the North San Rafael area. We also have a joint countywide traffic signal improvement project where we have an HSIP grant for, and we'll be installing new audible pedestrian signals in about 16 intersections. Also in the queue for planning and design, we're working with Caltrans on the design of the Freitas roundabout. They're at about 95% plans, and we're currently reviewing those and providing feedback to Caltrans. We also have our 2nd and 4th Street intersection, plus the West Crescent traffic signal improvements. We're hoping to complete our design and bid in 2024. As we're very excited to announce early this year is that we got the OBAG 3 grant, and we're currently working on the forms required to get reimbursement through their funding. And then we're hoping to go into construction in 2025. And then next, out of our bike and ped master plan, we're developing the conceptual plans for the bike and pedestrian facilities along Freitas Parkway. Additionally, we have ATP funding for the Canal Transportation Experience, and we're planning to start the design in spring, or start with the design RFP in 2024. This is also a multi-year project with construction planned in, I think, 26, 27. And we also have the canal crossing, which is AKA the Swing Bridge project, which has funding allocated for fiscal year 24-25. We also have partial funding for Lincoln Avenue rehabilitation, scope and design. And we recently applied for the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Grant Program just last month for 2 additional projects. The Neighborhood Active Transportation Gateway Project, which is improvements along Bellum to provide pedestrian and bicycle improvements from Bay Point all the way to Anderson and just past that. Also, we have submitted a grant application for the multi-use pass to Civic Center Station. And here's a list of our ongoing and annual plans and programs. We've got our crosswalk improvements where we select several crosswalks annually based on our budget to kind of identify potential opportunities for enhancements. We recently restriped the crosswalks near schools, and Nat also evaluated certain crosswalks that would benefit from rapid flashing beacons. We also have our annual sidewalk repair program, which we partner with residents to help improve sidewalk along the residential frontages. And we're planning to provide an update to City Council on this program later this fall. We also have the city sidewalk remove and replace program, where we're hoping to use budget from this funding to partner with the countywide traffic signal improvements so that we can upgrade curb ramps along with the installation of the pedestrian push buttons. We're also using part of this budget to do some sidewalk shaving to remove offsets and tripping hazards. We're also working on a 3-year pavement plan for our PMP. And we're also working on an annual program for smart city implementation. We're currently seeking grant funding for this, but it includes upgrading technologies such as adding more mile vision cameras and integration of leading pedestrian interval for traffic signals. We've already done a couple in the downtown area, and we continue to look at opportunities to implement more of this. We also have our annual traffic signal battery backup systems program where we go in rotation and we try to upgrade each of the cabinets so that we make sure we have the backup required if any of the traffic signal were to go down. Lastly, we also have budgeted every year to create conceptual plans based on projects identified in a bike and ped master plan. We're also going to be working on an update, which Nat will be talking more about next.
Well, I guess we can, if any members of the committee have any questions, I have one question. The Freitas roundabout, is that just the one roundabout? Because I remember we had a presentation, there were two different roundabout projects, and one was the first roundabout coming off the interchange, and the other was, I think, two additional roundabouts along Freitas. And this is just the first one right off the highway, right? And the other one I thought was pretty preliminary last time we saw it.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, Tam is working with consultants on the two roundabouts on the other side.
Okay.
Yes, it's very preliminary.
okay. Yeah, that was, heard 95%, I was like, it can't be the other. Any other community members have any questions?
I always have questions and comments. Yeah.
Okay.
I will preface this by about a month ago at City Council, the pavement program, the repaving program came out. And that was the first that I had heard of it. And it included the way that I ride my daily commute there. And I was very happy to see the article in the paper with some quotes from you, April, that some of those facilities were going to be improved. The alarming part to me was that I try to stay pretty involved and I had not heard about that previously. And these restriping components of our pavement management, to me, just seems like a no-brainer. I'm glad that call was made. I'm worried that call could have slipped through the cracks. So my comments about that for some of these other ones, so right now, for the first time ever, I just heard about this Canal Neighborhood Phase 2 pavement, which seems probably a similar thing that I don't know about, but I know that the canal is in desperate need of a number of bicycle and pedestrian upgrades. The other thing that I was in this, you mentioned the conceptual Freitas Parkway bicycle facility and the conceptual plans. To me, I know the bicycle facility, I think is going to be off-road in a separate class 1 path or class 4 path, depending on how you do that. But again, that's on a section of road, some of that road that's going to get repaved. And so, I see that's a winter 2024 project is what that said. And so I'm curious why our repaving is happening now. And I think it's in October, I think like this month. That wouldn't be involved. And then my final thing was you were talking about restriping crosswalks, which is another pet peeve of mine because there's a crosswalk I've emailed Nat. I've submitted many things about on the way to school for my kids. And I'm curious about the cost and difficulty of restriping a crosswalk and maybe the cost and difficulty of all these things. To my mind, restriping should be fairly simple. And I don't know if it is simple or if it's expensive or if you have to do studies. That's a lot of questions all about restriping and pavement management.
Yeah, I can. Are you okay if I take those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Joanna mentioned with the pavement management program is our goal is to have a 3-year plan so we can start talking to everybody about it. So that hadn't happened in the past. And so we recently switched to doing, I know people call it paving, but we're actually doing pavement maintenance, which is like a slurry seal.
Sure.
And then we can restripe. So we're not paving because paving triggers other things like, there's a variety of things you can look up what they trigger. So based on our budget, which is not huge for pavement maintenance, we're doing slurry projects. And yes, we acknowledge that we could be better about informing people when those come up. This is actually our 3rd year in a row we've done this slurry seal type process. And so we're working with a consultant to get 3 years. And so we should have our 3-year program set up I think the next couple of months that we can present and talk about and show on the website, this is what we think we're gonna do, so that we can look at opportunities to change striping. But the budget is only for slurry seal and striping, it's not for anything beyond.
Yeah, no
that.
curbs, no anything.
Yes, so just to clarify, because that the cost goes way up if we start adding other things,
Okay.
so. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking today about the different striping that we want to add on Freitas Parkway to try to do a bike buffer. And so we're measuring out there and trying to figure that out before we do the slurry. I think Joanna mentioned it might be 2024.
Mhm.
It's getting, I mean, although it's 90 degrees today, it's getting cold fast. So we're not sure if that project's even gonna happen this fiscal year, because it's 100% weather dependent.
Oh, interesting.
So as soon as the temperature drops, we can't do it.
And when you're doing the slurry and the restriping, is restriping changing the cost of any of this?
Restriping can increase the cost significantly, so we had to evaluate whether or not we can afford to do the buffers. And so we're pulling money from other, like our contingency for the year in order to do buffers on these roads. So it does increase a lot. Green striping is very expensive, and so we're trying to figure out other ways to afford the current project.
Although some of that product already has a bike lane, you know,
Right.
not a buffered bike lane,
Yeah.
but so no matter what, you would be doing a bike lane.
Yes.
It's just the addition of the buffer.
It's just a buffer.
And then how does that compare to the Freitas bicycle facility?
Yes, yeah, so the Freitas is one of the projects in the bike and ped master plan talked about a class 1 path along
Mhm.
Freitas, and so that's what we have. It was ranked pretty high, and so that's what we have a consultant looking at the conceptual drawings for that. So that we could potentially apply for grant funding in the future, so.
And that's not a slurry seal, so.
No, that's
big project.
that's a path that's, and these slurry projects are supposed to happen every 7 to 10 years, so it's maintaining our asphalt longer. So this, you know, it's not like we can't do something else in the future, we're just trying to maintain. Main purpose of the program is to maintain the asphalt.
Sure.
And then you mentioned crosswalks.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, as we mentioned about staff, we have very limited staff. I know it says we have 31 maintenance team, but the striping group is more like a couple people.
Mhm.
And they also do storm drains, and they also do a variety of other things. So we do that in-house, a lot of the crosswalk striping, like we did a bunch of crosswalks recently, but we only have a limited amount of time that we can do those for our staff. And then we've tried contracting out striping, and striping contractors are beyond busy right now. I think we have a 4-month delay on a project to do T's and L's in the canal and Spinnaker neighborhood. So it's really hard to get striping contractors. So I don't know price wise. I mean, we haven't seen if they've really gone up in price. It's more of like, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Someday. Unfortunately.
Thank you. I really like, I mean, of that, I really like the idea of this 3-year plan. Especially if it's gonna come to BPAC for public comment. Especially even more if it will just start including the bicycle elements, if they're very easy that we have in our plan. Questions? Oops.
Other committee members have any questions at this point? Do we have any comments from the public?
Are we allowed to do that now?
Well, this item was on the agenda, so.
Yeah.
It was kind of lumped together, so we could take public comment here.
I think it might be easier to do it after each, because these items are kind of distinct, and it might get all jumbled up if we're trying to do this and then AB 43 and the bike festival all at once.
Yeah, do you want to limit the amount of,
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, if we could limit it to 2 minutes, we do have plenty of other speakers and lots to get through.
and maybe a limit to the amount of time total?
Should we start in the room and then?
Yeah.
Did you want to get, sorry, okay.
I just actually have questions. You said something about Albert Park netting. I'm just curious. None of these have descriptions after them, and there's nothing for me to go press a button and go look at to see actually what that is referring to. You want just my question? Do I ask you all of them first? The stupid question is, what is a bicycle facility? That is. And I want to know what, in terms of, you're talking about road conditions, which I don't totally understand. So I ask you a particular road, which is the road going on Second Street, for example, from Irwin to like Trader Joe's, what condition do you call that road? That was it.
I'm just trying to figure out, typically like a council, we take all comments and then we address them
Oh, okay.
then, or
Yeah, we can.
I'm just, I'm asking you as the.
Yeah,
the chair, how-
why don't we do?
Okay.
Anybody can talk or?
Yeah.
Barry, raise your hand and Barry will.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to start off with a compliment. I got to use the C-Click Fix app recently, and I just rode past the bike lane and I saw that it was fixed. So thank you very much to BPW. That worked out really well. One thing that I would like to talk about is the sustainability goals. I think the BPAC could advise the city to, one of the statements is that they want 25% of passenger vehicles to be ZEV by 2030. And I think a really easy win would be pushing bikes and e-bikes, because you get a multiplier effect. Zero emissions, and it's also a car off the road. But how do we do that? And it's like a lot of what you've been showing is prioritizing movement around San Rafael. I think we have a real problem being bisected by 101 and West Marin traffic. There's a lot of people that don't live in San Rafael that determine the quality of life in San Rafael. And I think it'd be great to help people in this beautiful city get around a lot easier. Such as, I see there's things about improvements for bikes, but one of the things that I don't see talked about is there's going to be a burgeoning utility bike population, and traditional bike racks don't work for that. We need out of the box thinking for bike storage, because people need to be able to go to the store and have their bikes safe to do the shopping. And those are, I would imagine, they're tough infrastructure problems, but I think it's worth looking into. So thank you.
I'm just going to encourage you regarding your comment about the bike parking to hang on to that until we get into the bike master plan update. Not this agenda item, but the actual plan update. That would be a great comment to have.
Said bike master.
No, but that's just, we're just talking about the schedule for it. The actual project isn't beginning yet. I'm just saying, keep that in the back of your mind and bring it up in a few months when we're actually engaged in the planning process.
And again.
Yeah.
Open government.
So I think you can also announce your name when you speak.
My name is Pete Bertrand. I actually live over in Fairfax. I walk like through Centerville office for shopping. I have a quick comment on the repave project that's affecting the Freitas Parkway. I've been made aware that there have been recommendations to remove the slip lanes over there as part of this repave project, and I think one of them is getting taken out. I just wanted to reiterate support for removing the rest of it.
I have a comment picking up on that, and I actually have handouts showing that slip lane off of Freedom Parkway. My name is Kurt Rossetti. I'm a registered professional civil engineer, and I've lived in Terra Linda since 2015. The manual T. Freedom Parkway is the main artery through Terra Linda. It was originally designed to extend farther west, crossing over the Terra Linda Sleepy Hollow Ridge into San Anselmo. And it was going to be a thoroughfare similar to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Unfortunately, those plans never came to fruition, and the Freedom Parkway dead ends at the Terra Linda Sleepy Hollow Nature Preserve. Unfortunately, 75 years later, we are still living with the remnants of that original plan. As can be seen on page 1 of the handout, the final westbound pork chop turnoff onto Monticello Road remains as a blight on the neighborhood, my neighborhood, and a monument to the paved paradise parking lot mindset of the last century. Circled in red, you can see there are no crosswalks to the north of Freedom Parkway. I call it a crosswalk desert. Despite the fact that the intersection has 2 school bus stops, I've only shown one on there. There's another one catty corner to that. And is crossed by children and elderly pedestrians throughout the day. I've had a number of near misses at this intersection. Cars must not only avoid pedestrians crossing Monticello any which way they can, but other vehicles. As shown on page 2 of the handout, the turnoff feeds into a blind intersection with Bamboo Terrace. After a nearly 6-year effort by myself and others in this room, I'm grateful that the turnoff was closed off today with orange jersey barriers and what I hope is a short-lived temporary solution. As shown on page 3 of the handout, the intersection still lacks much-needed crosswalks, curbs, and sidewalks, which should be addressed during the upcoming North San Rafael repaving project, which we just learned about. I thank the city for finally addressing this dangerous intersection, but I respectfully request that a permanent solution be implemented as soon as possible so we can convert this asphalt anachronism into a beautiful green space. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the handouts.
Yeah, so in 2018, Graham called me. This proposal actually came up. Said he was thinking they could scrape this road if the Santa Barbara Neighborhood Association would develop a park with there. We call that Daffodil Park lit, and it's been a project of our neighborhood association for 6 years. Several of our members are here, and it's, you know, and we said, yes, we'll do that. We raised $250,000 to tear up 10 feet of street on Delgado, you know, for the Recreate Street project. And we were prepared to raise money for the undergrounding on Freitas, which had been passed and promised twice to the North San Rafael neighborhood. And so, you know, we've really been able to do this. Actually, it's not like a pipe dream. But somehow, then Bill backed off and said, well, we have this list and there's other priorities. So this thing got pushed down. And every time we bring it up, we were informed that there's these other priorities. So we were on this list, and then I found out that lately this year I hear that, well, nobody knew anything about it in public. So we're not on any list project. And I just think we need better communication with Public Works, with the neighborhood leaders out there in North San Rafael. Like, we had no idea that the undergrounding project was going to be canceled on us again. We could have shortened it. We're prepared to raise money. Nobody even talked to us. They just brainstormed on how to take the 5 million and bring it somewhere else. And this is another example of a lack of communication that we used to have. Tremendous communication with, you know, since Dave and all the other public works directors up to Bill. And Bill even originally proposed this project. But we would like to have this somehow get on a list and actually be a real thing. To have the funds available, and we could share with the fundraising. We have a record of raising funds for public works project for San Rafael. So now that we're going to be doing this slurry seal, another project, I think it's a perfect time. And apparently somebody's listening, because the road was just blocked off today. Again, nobody told us. So you don't know what the plan is. Is this permanent? Is this temporary? What's going on? But, you know, we've got neighborhood associations out there that have been active partners with the city for 30, 40 years. And since COVID, nobody talks to us. And I'd like to see that change. There.
Thank you. Everyone else here?
I can add to that as well. So my name's Lauren Withy. I'm a homeowner in Carolinda and a parent. And I run, walk, and bike regularly across Freitas. And I watch young kids from our community cross Freitas every day going to school, and watch traffic back up with parents who are driving their kids short distances to school because they don't want them to cross Freitas because it's dangerous. And I think, you know, we have big opportunity here, clear opportunity, to take advantage of kind of low hanging fruit. Close these slip lanes. I was really excited to see today the slip lane closed, Monticello, finally. And, you know, I think as, you know, I think obviously like we want this, you know, we like these to be part of a long-term plan, but I think there are these opportunities to take kind of quick action as part of these projects as you did today and kind of figure out what the, you know, what the long-term plan would be. These are, you know, big safety improvements. There are also improvements that encourage people to walk and bike more, which also improves safety. So it's sort of a self-reinforcing action. And, you know, there are other slip lanes on Las Clavadas and Delgado that I think could easily be closed off as well. And I'd love to see that as part of this resurfacing project as well. And I think also we've talked about restriping here. I think there's definitely a need for additional crosswalks in the crosswalk desert that Kurt mentioned. But also, crossing Freitas at the Delgado and Las Clavadas intersections, or Delgado and Monticello intersections rather, on the east side of Freitas. I think we can also add crosswalks there. And make those all high visibility because what's currently on it's not. So I'm really excited to hear that you're going to be putting together this 3-year plan for repaving, resurfacing, and look forward to participating in that in the future. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope that we'll sort of continue to make these improvements on Freitas, and follow through on what was promised to the community in terms of the Monticello intersection as well.
April, can you tell us how we would get on this list? How do we get support for this?
I think we're just gonna get all the comments first, and then staff will respond to all of this after we're done. Sure. Yes.
And so I think my comment might have been somewhat already addressed by Philip actually brought this up, but just getting most of the response of that 3-year program, but really trying to take advantage of when there's maintenance being done to a road surface and we've got opportunity for restriping and making those improvements for crosswalks, and even if like curbs aren't involved or that kind of thing, but like quick filled options, those sort of flexible bollards, which are not ideal, but better than nothing if it can create those pedestrian refuges at crosswalks. The wider bike lanes, or if you already have a bike lane, thinning up that car traffic lane to reduce traffic speed, or reduce speeding really. And then affording that little extra safety buffer for riders, and improving these crosswalks for pedestrians. So like even if there's a little extra cost associated with it at that time, it feels like that's money well spent, in the sense that I don't know, there's been so many pedestrians being hit in San Rafael, cyclists being hit. Like, this is one of the more dangerous places to be a pedestrian or cyclist in Marin. And so just, even if there are unideal solutions that are done sort of in the interim, in that, like when that slurry, cheaper resurfacing is being done, if there's any safety improvement that's going to be captured at that moment, that's safety improvements for the citizens and affects people's lives. So just reiterating, I'm glad to hear that there's this 3-year program that would bring this into the normal process, because I think that's really, really, really important. So thank you.
All right, Patrick.
My name is Patrick Seidler with W2ETM. And I just wanted to kind of follow up on the comments that you made. It seemed to me a couple things. One is, I think San Rafael has a complete streets policy, right? Are you guys agreeing? Maybe not. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that's a good thing to have, complete street policy, maybe put it in bike pedestrian master plan. But what I see is a lot of people saying the same thing, which is being integrated in the process. And I'd like to compliment the Department of Public Works, because the signal that I see coming from the Department of Public Works and from the mayor is that's why she's here and why the council is interested in these things. Is I think that they're trying to involve the public more with this. So I think it's a little head nodding area. It's opportunity. Comments are well made. And again, compliment the DPW council.
a complete streets program that's shared with the public.
Anyone else here want to speak on the site?
I have a comment on the roundabouts that are proposed off 101. Sorry to comment twice, but this is a different matter. I have an engineering background, and one of my concerns is that the roundabouts are going to be so close to Highway 101. It's generally recommended that they're a quarter of a mile away from a highway such as 101. Truckee put in roundabouts right off of Highway 80 within a stone's throw, and it's been a traffic nightmare. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and see how that's going to be addressed. I'm sure Caltrans is involved, and they may have standards that will dictate where the roundabouts can be located, but I do have a major concern that it's going to cause major backups on 101, trying to get around these roundabouts that are so close to that.
Do we have anything online?
Yeah.
We can speak?
Thanks, we do have one. Gonna call on Maura Wong. Okay.
So I have a lot on the agenda. Just clarify. Let's start timing up people.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Maura Wong Cooper, and I'm here representing Guide Dogs for the Blind tonight. So I just had a question about your, on slide 12, you had mentioned the pedestrian lead times for signals. And so I was curious if that was going to also house some audible tactile APS with locator beacons, just because people with sight loss, that's a bit tricky to locate. If you don't have that traffic noise to cross with, and you don't have an audible beacon telling you that it's a safe crossing time or pedestrian phase, that can be extremely difficult to monitor with sight loss. So that was my question. And then I know you'd mentioned that there was a specific number. If you have those locations, we'd be happy to partner with you and come out and give maybe potential suggestions for how folks with sight loss can cross those intersections a bit easier.
Thank you. Next.
Next person, John Buffum.
Yeah, I was surprised to see those barriers go up today, on the Y on Monticello and Freitas. And I assumed that it was because of a problem of people turning off of Bamboo Terrace at where I happen to live. And there are generally cars or trucks parked right there, and you can't see anybody driving down Monticello towards Bamboo Terrace. And it doesn't seem like this closing the Y will do anything to fix that. And I had suggested to Rachel Kurtz that perhaps painting the curb red along there might give a better line of sight for people emerging from Bamboo Terrace. So I just wonder if you can address what exactly this closing the Y will solve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Next, Kimberly Noss.
Good evening, this is Kimberly Ng. I'm a resident for Terra Linda since 2014. I also impacted by the Freitas Monticello interchange there. The safety is of major concern. We have a lot of children around this area. Vallecito has a walking school bus. The Miller Creek students have to cross that street to get to the bus stop. We have students going to Terra Linda High School, and it's almost as if they're perpetually playing Frogger. So just putting in more crosswalks, I think we need to do something a little bit more elevated, such as flashing lights if somebody's crossing those streets, because we do have people that do California stops through that stop sign. And it'd be great just to have an assessment of how many people are going through there and just making sure that it's ultra safe. I'm on I'm Barberry Lane, so I'm near Bamboo Terrace, and I too have felt that there's been a lot of blind sides that you just can't see the traffic coming from the left or the right when you're trying to get onto Monticello from the Bamboo Terrace lane. So it'd be great if we can really address the safety of that whole intersection. And lastly, I want to wrap it up with thanking you guys for closing off that slip lane. I saw that today and I was so pleased. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
Next person, Leo Beezer.
Hi, my name is Leo. I'm an intern. Currently I'm a California, Terra Linda resident since 2009, and I'm also an intern at Supervisor Sackett's office currently right now. I actually have a recommendation to as to which direction our city should be going in the next few years. And then we should look at what the Netherlands have been doing with how they've been doing pedestrianization and how they've been handling the transition away from car centrism and more towards a more pedestrian focus. And they have done an excellent job with that, and that's my recommendation there.
Thank you. Next.
Next, Avery Whitmarsh.
Hi, my name's Avery Whitmarsh. I'm a Terra Linda homeowner since 2018 and just wanted to weigh in on some of the bike and pedestrian safety concerns. I feel like Terra Linda has the potential to be a really great walkable and bikeable neighborhood, and it is in some ways. It's so compact and accessible, but some of these main roads make it really not feel practical for that. The Pavadas and Freitas intersection and the Montecillo and Freitas intersections in particular just feel really unsafe, and I never feel comfortable crossing them with my 7-year-old. So I would just encourage everyone to take advantage of any opportunity we can to make those safety improvements and make our neighborhood more bike and pedestrian friendly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next person, Susan.
Hi, first I want to thank the mayor for making a presence at the BPAC. It's really important that somebody so important listens to our concerns. So I have a few comments. I'll try to fit them in the 2 minutes. First off, I think the connectivity, like getting from the ferry to downtown Santa Fe is really poor. I really hope that the city prioritizes that because you can't meet your sustainability goals if everybody is driving to work. The lights are timed terribly. The bike paths are completely covered in trash and debris and glass. I've gotten multiple flat tires this week, so I really hope that there's more maintenance with the bike lanes and street sweeping for bike lanes where prioritizing street sweeping for cars, but you're not prioritizing street sweeping for some of the most vulnerable people who need multimodal access. And that brings me to road safety, where on 3rd and Heatherton, where that crosswalk was eliminated, and that kind of reinforces the culture of driving and the lack of pedestrian safety, where Santa Fe says, well, if pedestrian gets hit, we're going to take away the crosswalk instead of slowing down traffic and putting in infrastructure that slows down vehicles. Sure, you can do future improvements, but once something is done, it's really difficult to go back and undo it. And that brings me to B Street, where there's a lot of pedestrian improvements that could have been made with those intersections. And yeah, you can go back and redo them, but once you pour all the concrete and make B a two-way street, when is the city actually going to go back and prioritize more resources when there's so many things to be done? So I really urge the city to do things right the first time. when implementing safety improvements or attempting to implement safety improvements. Santa Fe is one of like the most unsafe cities in Marin to walk and bike. And it's really unfortunate because we have some of the most vulnerable people in Santa Fe and they can't access multimodal transportation the way people who sit in their cars and drive can. So I really urge BPAC to urge the council to prioritize safety of our very vulnerable residents.
Thanks very much. And looks like we have one more.
Lizzie Horvitz.
Seems to unmute maybe.
Lizzie Horvitz, you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thanks. Thank you to the committee and for Mayor Kate and other representatives for being here tonight. I live in Gerstle Park and I'm the parent of 2 school-aged children, the youngest of whom has finally learned to ride her bike. So we're fully on our bikes now. And I came to this meeting to urge the city to continue to prioritize safe streets for all of San Rafael and bicycle paths in our city. I gave my comment earlier this year in the fall, returning from a family trip to the Midwest where I grew up, where we spent our days biking as a family and made some of our best memories. And then we came back to San Rafael and it was a real rude awakening. When my family wants to go for a family bike ride together, we load our 4 bikes on the back of our car and drive to a different city in Marin to find bike paths or safe streets to ride on. When we moved to San Rafael 8 years ago, we fell in love with the tree-lined streets of Gerstle Park, and it seemed like an ideal place to raise a family. I pictured my kids riding their bikes around our neighborhood to school, riding downtown. I had no idea that San Rafael was the most dangerous city for bicyclists and pedestrians. And now that I have bike riding children, I won't let them bike ride in our community or to school. Because crossing 2nd and 3rd and riding down 5th to Sun Valley is like a death trap. So we adults talk a lot these days about how kids have no freedom. We yearn for the notion of being able to send our kids out and play in the neighborhood and bike around. And we need to invest in all of our neighborhoods to make them safer for that, for our kids, for our more vulnerable citizens, and for families to feel safe. So I know I speak for parents and families when I say that I truly believe that investment in making our city bike and pedestrian friendly will draw younger families here and build a more vibrant, diverse, and less car-dependent community in an era when I know we're all acutely aware of the need to reduce our greenhouse emissions. I want this for San Rafael, I want it for my children, and I want this for future generations. Thank you.
Can I make a recommendation? Sure. We can maybe do the next 2 comments and then move on and not stop between the next 2 agenda items because we need to kind of stick to ending around 8 and we're not going to get through the next 2.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, though, I just want to say that it's unique and a privilege to have mayor here. And I think a lot of residents are aware of the fact the mayor's here. So I think giving them their time is worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly don't want to be cutting off comments from the public, and I think it's more a matter of we want to get through the other agenda items, and if people could just hold their comments and present them later. I would also ask if people could please try and keep your comments as close as possible to the items on the agenda. Some of these are very useful comments, and my response to a lot of them is, yeah, I really hope this person remembers this when we're doing the bicycle ped master plan update, because this is exactly the kind of council we want to get at that point, maybe 6 months from now. So I would so please think about what you've got and how it relates to the meeting, and thanks for your interest. So I'd like to turn it back over to staff for the next couple of presentations.
You call the last 2 hands or?
Yeah. You right.
Yeah, if I'm sorry, if you could, if the 2 people who are still have your hands up. You can just hold your comments. We'll get back to you as we get through the next couple of items.
Stephanie, right, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
You want-
one of my main responses was gonna be what you just said, which is the bike and ped master plan is what dictates our work plan. And, and we are about to update it, which is what Nat's gonna go over our schedule. And several of the items that were brought up are not in the master plan, which is what we're looking at. And so I'd highly encourage people to reach out during that process so that they could be part of this work plan, because we need to go off of a plan. I know, and we all care about safety, and sometimes we can get some projects in before that, but there was a priority that was done in this bike and ped master plan, and there's gonna be a reprioritization that's gonna be done shortly. Once we kick off the master plan. So that's really the guiding documents that we need. So.
Chair, if I may,
Sure.
quick comment.
Sure.
So I just want to comment to the slip lane, and it's great that the advocates are in the room. I can tell you we're already getting emails of the not advocates in the room. So when you talk about neighborhood and community response, do reach out to your neighbors, do reach out to the associations, and to have the groundswell, because it is, I'd say it's a pilot. I don't use that word, which means that's why it's those ugly, super ugly barriers. I tend to agree. I think there's a real safety as well as just a mobility positive thing that comes out of it, but not everyone feels that way. So I think what would be really great is at the next meetings, we get lots of positive reinforcement, like, yes, let's get rid of the slip lanes all up and down. So that's something that you can really help us on, because the city, we can do the actions. And yes, it happened kind of not impulsively, happened without maybe a lot of, to your point, for warning. But really, as you're thinking about it, start talking to neighbors about it, because that really helps the city to have these things become permanent and way more beautiful than the big orange things. So
We do.
and not just you, I mean, and there are a lot of other people in the room too, who can like really keep, because we are getting already emails about people that are not happy about it. So just want to add that. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Ms. Miller, I think that's a great suggestion for the sake of everybody who's online now and is sitting in the room who don't know how to participate. Are you going to articulate that, or do you mind saying it about 3 or 4 times in your presentation? That way it'll stick, at least in my feeble brain, of how to do that and how to have the input. Otherwise, it's kind of a mystery that floats. And give us input. How and when.
Well, I think it's part of this next
Good,
item.
thank you.
Today I'm going to present on the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, kind of give an update as to where we are from our last previous conversation 2 months ago. So our goals and objective of this bike master plan that we plan on updating is to develop a plan that sets San Rafael on a path towards significant increases in walking and bicycling by people of all ages and prioritizes safety. We want to focus on both bicyclists and pedestrians. Currently, in the bicycle master plan that's been adopted in 2018, it has a lot of components on bicyclists, but the pedestrians, there's a small portion of it included, but we want to focus a little bit more on that as we do the next update as well. So since 2018, when the bicycle master plan was adopted, we had a couple other plans that were adopted as well through council. One of them is the downtown San Rafael precise plan, which touched bases on a lot of good topics that we need to incorporate into our new update. We have the canal community-based transportation plan that was adopted in June 2022. We have another plan right now that's currently almost being finalized, which is our local road safety plan. This plan touches bases on collision data that we have in the city, and it basically brings up, countermeasures. What kind of safety improvements can we do for both cyclists and pedestrians in the local road safety plan? So we're gonna try to activate that information that we do know now and incorporate that into the master plan update.
It's a county led.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
Yeah.
just clarifying.
And we also have Vision Zero, which is county led too. This one, I believe, has been in the works. It's still being drafted right now, but as we get further updates, that will be shared throughout the next few feedback meetings on what Vision Zero is and how we're going to incorporate that into our plans. So after evaluating what we need to include in the new bicycle master plan update, there's a lot of areas that we kind of want to touch base on, would be policies, wayfinding signage for pedestrians and bicyclists, lighting, electric bike share. As of right now, TAM is leading a program where they're going to be selecting, it's more of a pilot study where they're going to set out 200 e-bikes between Marin County, different cities, and implement that and see how that goes. And if everything goes well, then the e-bike program would actually be expanded. As we're updating the bike master plan, we're going to incorporate some policies on how we want to implement this in our city as well. Bike parking, I know that was mentioned earlier about parking. Where do we need to implement? What type of bike parking? This is something that we need to create a policy where we actually tackle all the requests that we have from our residents, because we do get a lot of requests on it. So let's create a plan and implement it once we have funding. And also, there's mentions of AB 43 to see what we can do in regards to improving some of our corridors that we do have. Do we need to lower speeds and all that? That would be something that we would kind of evaluate to move forward with AB 40. The current bicycle master plan has long-term projects, has conceptual designs, and a lot of great projects that are listed. But one thing that we want to do is kind of minimize that a little bit and get more specific. What are the short-term hanging fruit projects can we tackle? What are the midterm projects we can tackle? And as CIP has mentioned, we are tackling a lot of the long-term projects right now, but what are the other smaller projects that we can knock out within the year moving forward? Connectivity was one thing that was mentioned quite a bit. Access to parks, trails, roadway networks. We're doing quite a bit right now. Safe routes to school, park and recreational master plan just got adopted recently as well. So we're gonna have to kind of dive into those elements and try to incorporate them into a new plan. Pedestrian projects. There's a lot of pedestrian improvements that we can do, and those are the things that we are evaluating right now. And we'll be incorporating a lot of it into our master plan. And outreach. 2018, we did a lot of outreach. We are still continuing to do a lot of outreach on an annual basis, but this is going to open up a new opportunity to get more feedback. Now that we're out of the whole pandemic, everyone's really active. We're getting emails to see Click Fix. There's a lot of outreach, and we want to kind of still continue that push to see what other feedback can we get from the community. So those are just a few of the updates and needs that we want to incorporate. As we put this RFP out there, we want to see what other complete street components and what other feedback can other consultants bring to the table. So we want to incorporate all of these items, but then also in addition to what else can we improve the plan with. So here's the current schedule of what we're looking at for putting them request for proposal out. We're going to be finalizing it this October. We'll be submitting it, putting it out for consultant evaluations and getting proposals to review. Time frame would be to do interviews in December, award the contract in January, and then provide contract notice to proceed in February. This bike master plan is going to be something that we're going to be working on for quite a bit. There's so many different components to it. So the odds of us wrapping up the next update will be sometime in 2025. As we are working on updating the bike master plan, we do have a lot of short-term action plan items as well. Currently, the transportation division, we're working on signal timing improvements. We're doing a lot of modeling in the downtown area. What kind of improvements can we do for pedestrians and cyclists? Whether it's bicycle ped heads to adding LPI elements, which is leading pedestrian intervals. That gives pedestrians an extra 4 seconds to basically cross before we allow any vehicle movement. Installation of audible pedestrian push buttons. Joanna had mentioned this earlier. Marin County did get awarded basically a big grant. And there are 16 locations in our city that we are going to be converting it and changing the push buttons to an audible push buttons. So the Guide for Dogs comment that we received earlier, I will definitely be reaching out to you as well to get your feedback on those 16 locations. But we do plan on adding audible push buttons, especially in the downtown area. Installation of rapid flashing beacons at mid-block crossings. As you guys know, some of our collision data that we do have, some of them are fall within the crosswalks that we do have in the city. We are looking at improvements. We've done a few changes so far. So we did add RFBs at 5th and G and Mission and Court, and we are performing a few other evaluations throughout the city, especially surrounding the schools. So we'll be implementing those changes and doing those. I know one of the comments that was mentioned about removing crosswalks is not the solution. What else can we do? There are other traffic calming measures that we can implement, and this is just one of them. Safe routes to school. TAM is working a lot on conceptual designs. We are looking at them as well on safe routes to school. Let's prioritize some of these roadways where our kids travel to school and try to improve those as well. Feasibility study on implementing fully actuated pedestrian push buttons. The city, what we have right now in our current infrastructure is we have fixed timing on a lot of crosswalks. So basically what that means is that the traffic signal program is basically giving that green time for the pedestrian to cross. The new standards and what we want to implement to provide more safety is let's change that and add fully actuated head push buttons as we're kind of evolving our city into more of a smart city, more technology and all that. This is one thing that we need to implement moving forward, which is to change most of the corridors, the intersections, and let's add all pedestrian push buttons. Let's look at all the timing. Let's make those improvements and give them the sufficient time for them to cross safely. And that's for pedestrians and bicycles. And the very last thing that I want to talk about is we're applying for a lot of grants. So we're being pretty active. We're trying to utilize the current funding that we do have to do these improvements, but we are seeking more funding as well. Right now, pretty much the state of California and throughout the whole United States there's so much funding out there for federal and state. So we're being pretty selective and tackling the ones that we know for sure that we have a good chance of getting. So the two ones that we're going for right now, there's a reconnecting communities and neighborhoods, and also strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation grants. So we've submitted the RCN grants recently, and we'll be submitting the SMART grant sometime next week. So we are seeking for grants that are it ranges from like $1 to $2 million. But if we do get those, we can implement a lot of positive short-term, mid-term changes.
What's the SMART grant?
The SMART grant is more of it's a technology grant. So it's more like, can you improve your traffic signals, detection and all that.
What's revolutionizing transportation? What are you envisioning?
So pretty much one element that we kind of do want to add is, so we have My Vision in City. So it gives a live the detection of pedestrians, bicyclists, cars. One thing that we might want to incorporate soon, and we're going to be doing a pilot study, it's using AI. So with AI, basically, it allows you to detect a pedestrian in a crosswalk. And usually, let's just say we have a normal crosswalk, 40 feet wide, you allow them about 20 seconds to cross. If it's an elderly that's crossing, basically, if they might take more than 20 seconds. So instead of letting the walk change after 20 seconds, the AI and the smart detection actually extends their walk time. and it won't allow vehicles to travel through until they fully cross the whole intersection. So detection is one of the biggest improvements that we do have. And as of right now, Mild Vision, we incorporate that into most of the downtown corridor. And we're looking to improve all the other sections throughout the city too. It's just, it's very costly, but it's definitely it's gonna do wonders for something.
It would be great to have those on a future agenda and just a presentation on some of that capability.
And that's it for.
Okay, so now we're on to kind of understanding AB 43 and speed limits. I just want to mention that we do have a consultant, David Chrissy from Parametrics Online, who helped create most of these slides, if not all of the slides. So he's available for questions at the end to assist me on this, because I'm so new to this. Okay, oops, that's one. Okay, so just a little bit on speed limits. So speed limits are there to advise drivers on the maximum speeds. And so one of the things that we can do now with speed limits or the way we used to pre-AB 43 is there was a certain method that we had to do based on data. Like it's the 85th percentile, which I'll go into more detail on, and that's how we set speed limits. And there's just one way we could do it. And so AB 43 has kind of changed the way we can do speed limits moving forward. Okay, and then it's based on the vehicle code. That's what dictates the speed limits. And so there's the absolute speed limits where, 2-lane roads, you have to go 55 miles an hour. The minimum speed limit is typical. And then there's also the minimum speed limit could be like 25 miles an hour in residential or businesses. So there's certain ways that speed limits are set. And then everything else besides those standards is based on engineering and traffic surveys. So that's what we go out and we assess how fast people are driving. And based on current pre-AB 43, it was based on the 85th percentile. And there's a little bit on, collision history, and that can change it. But for the most part, it's based on traffic surveys, which is what we had to
explain the 85th percentile.
there's slides that are going to show details of that. Oh, sorry, I'm forgetting which screen I have. Okay, Okay, so the 85th percentile is considered the critical speed. There'll be a graphic shortly that will help explain this. So really speed limits are determined by the fastest 15% of vehicles. So if we show a little graphic here, I know how to move this, people in the room. So what this means is the people that are driving in this red circle, that's what's dictating the speed. So unfortunately, that's just how the rules have been in the past. And then we'll go into one more graphic that'll be also helpful. Okay, so these aren't in the right order. But anyways, so right now the way it is or in the past, it was the vicious cycle, right? So we would do these engineering traffic studies. The speeds are dependent on the top 15% or the fastest 15% of people. So therefore we have to raise speed limits. And then there could be adverse safety outcomes because of that. And then every 5 years, we have to do it again. So if people are driving fast and there's a capacity to drive fast, the speed limits just keep going up. So it doesn't necessarily depend on the road conditions. Like if there's more space, one of the reasons why we look at, for instance, on 3rd Street, we've narrowed all the lanes to 11 feet. Because when narrower lanes, typically people drive slower. So there's other measures that help people to drive slower, but when you're driving down a road that's 16 feet wide, people tend to just drive faster. And so that's why these kind of keep going up in speed. And so anyway, so the 85th percentile is outdated. It's pretty much what that says. And so then AB 43 came into place in January 1 of 2022, and it really dived into what else can we do. Okay, so AB 43 takes into account other things while setting speed limits, including vulnerable groups. It also can look at safety corridors where there's high risk of injury or a lot of collisions, or if there's a lot of high high levels of pedestrians or bikes along certain roads. And so, and then also, if there's been no road modifications, we're allowed to keep the speed limit the same, even if people are driving faster. So that's one of the big things. So there's tools that now AB 43 is helping us. So as an example, so the 85th percentile, if somebody was driving, if the 85th percentile triggered 38 miles an hour, we used to be required to increase the speed limit to 40 miles an hour. Like we had to go up because we had to round, so we rounded up to 40. So now with AB 43, we no longer have to round up to 40, we can keep it at 35. So we can keep speed limits down instead of raising just because people are driving, these top 15% of the people are driving fast. And then in other areas like safety corridors, if we establish safety corridors, or we establish what are the high head and bike generator corridors, then we can even lower the speed limit further. So we can go from 35 to 30. So there's opportunities for us to analyze the speed limits in a different way. Oops. Okay, so other key changes, you can create business activity districts, which allow speed limits to even go lower than 25 miles an hour, like 25 or 20 miles an hour on certain streets. And then, oh, and it also extends our engineering and traffic surveys, so we don't have to do them every 5 years, because every 5 years is pretty extensive. So now we can do them every 14 years. Okay, so managing speeds. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's a combination of multiple strategies. There's speed limits, but there's also traffic control devices, roadway design. Like I said, we can, the speed limit could be a certain speed, but if the road's really wide and there's people can drive fast, they can just drive fast. There's other things we need to do with roadway design, as well as doing public education and then enforcement. So there's lots of different strategies to manage speeds. Okay, so how can AB 43 help Santa Fe? So one of the things we're currently doing right now is we're doing our engineering and traffic study to evaluate the speeds on all of the streets in Santa Fe. Some of those are about to expire, so we need to do the studies anyways. So that's where we're going to gather all of our data so that we can look at applying AB 43. So we can, once we have those studies, we can look at previously adopted speed limits. If speed limits have creeped. So if they've creeped over the last couple of years, we can reevaluate whether or not we want to, bring them back to what they used to be on the last time we increased them. And then, as I mentioned, in some areas, we can look at going from 25 to 20 miles an hour, depending on if it's a business district. And then one of the things that's going to happen that's not in effect yet, but in June of 2024, we're allowed to implement this for safety corridors or high bike and ped generating land uses. So that's when that portion kicks in, is in 2024. So one of the things that we're going to look at is we're going to start planning our procedural steps on when that is allowed to happen. Like what is our plan for raising speed limits, or not raising, reducing. Wow. Okay. So this is our approach right now. So this fall, winter, we're going to receive all of our engineering and traffic survey data. We're going to get the draft, and then we're going to review the draft, and we're going to look at how we can evaluate AB 43 based on the data that we receive. And we're going to review this with our traffic safety committee, which is our internal meeting with police and fire and public works, and look at the data and what the history is on different streets. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this fall, winter. We're supposed to get that draft, I think, at the end of October, early November. So this is going to be a lot of work, but we're going to be diving into this. And then what comes out of that is we're going to be able to share what, our reassessed speed limits and recommendations, so we can do a final report based on the analysis that we've done. And then the next thing that we're going to be doing in spring, summer, fall is when we're going to start looking at these other, like the safety corridors, business activity corridors, school zones, You know, and then what is our policies for establishing like speed limits and changing speed limits? So we need to look at that as a whole, as a city, to figure out what procedures. So we're not randomly doing this. We want it to be methodical. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Just something to bring up with the schedule, as Nat mentioned, and all of the projects that Joanna mentioned. We have a pretty limited staff, so we're doing this with the Bike and Fun Master Plan with all of those other projects all at the same time. So that's why when it says fall, winter, and people might ask, why isn't it immediate? This is one of our priorities. It's just, we're doing other things too.
More staff.
Yeah, so, so this is, I think.
Trying to hire. You know, any engineers, we're trying to hire.
So I don't know if you want to, if we want to do comments there, if you want to quickly, it's only one slide if you want to talk about.
Oh, well, I think we'll just get to comments. It's just the last was just, again, thanking the. Yeah, no, that's okay. You guys can read it yourself. And this is just a reminder for BPAC. So as we go forward, first, gratitude for being here and helping provide input. And I think it's a couple things. One, focusing on the advisory concept, and you're out and about, you're talking to each other. So we're getting all of this good stuff. I'm just going to highlight number 5, educational efforts. I think historically BPAC has been super active when we're here in these meetings and we get the emails. And I would love, as we go forward, not to be solved tonight, but how does that educational piece that came out already from some of the comments that we received this evening, and we're really hoping that the committee figure out how to lean into it, either yourself or how you bring other people in, because I do think that is a really big component of it. So that's the one slide. Yes, let me go to it. Yeah, thank you. There we go.
I have a question.
And just a reminder real fast when we're going to take questions is that we do take questions via email too. So public.works@cityofsanrafael.org. So if we run out of time during this meeting and anybody who's online, please submit comments.
Where does that actually go?
Where does it go? It goes to about 10 people. I mean, it's an email box, but yeah. So we were talking about it today. Yes, we can all check that.
Best way to contact them.
And again, I would also encourage people to, whatever comments they have, they may want to just kind of tuck them away in the back of their head and keep them in mind for when we do the bike ped master plan update, because a lot of them probably will be relevant. I also have a clarifying question, because you mentioned the, AB 43 and there's a lot of potential things that could be applied there with schools or business districts. Since it sounds like that's going to require a lot of outreach, and I'm wondering, how is that going to interface with the bike ped master plan update, or are they going to be two completely separate efforts? Or
yeah, we're going to have to look at that. I mean, one of the things that Nat had on his slides was that on our policies, AB 43 could be part of our policies in the bike and ped master plan. So how are we going?
Certainly they overlap, but they're not really.
They do, but they're definitely, we don't want to create more plans. So I would think that we're going to do, what we talked about for AB 43 approach, like how we're going to have our process, but then we're going to have policies in the bike and ped master plan on, how we, I don't know, example.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
So I think a good way to think about it is we use these plans. These are living documents. It's not like we did it. Hey, we're so awesome. We stick it on a shelf. We actually use it as a nexus for allocating staff and financial resources. So your question's a good one. We've already seen the foundation for the AB 43, but I think as you're going through it, it's putting, and that's a very much a solution for a specific thing, which is slowing people down and reducing it. So the policy is how are we going to reduce pedestrian, bike, car interactions. AB 43 is one of the tactics of doing it. So think of it kind of that way. But the plan is important because that is where we can make those allocations. And it really gets us, one, it makes sure that we use all the good community input, and it gets away from the squeaky wheel syndrome. I love squeaky wheels. I talk to them all the time. They email me all the time. Awesome. And it's not a great way to do effective policy. So it's part of policy, but it's not the only way. So that's what we're trying to get at. So I just wanted to add that. That's
I mean, part of my thinking is I'm wondering, I don't know, maybe they're not on the same timeline exactly. And but I'm just thinking, I know sometimes if you're looking for input on multiple efforts, like people might be like, oh, it's another thing. and you don't want to miss that. So either make, I guess I would just keep that in mind as you think about how that gets scheduled, because I wouldn't want to overwhelm people with outreach requests and things like that. And this is certainly think a lot of the comments related to AB 43 are gonna be relevant for the bike path master plan and vice versa. Any other thoughts on?
I have two questions. It's kind of related. One is, if we go back to the approach on AB 43, and your two slides on that, your side-by-side slide. It looked good in terms of gathering data, coming up with some suggestions. But what is, the white and yellow one? What is resident approach? What's, I didn't see implementation there. So am I just missing that, or am I? Hold on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's part of it. So
reassess speed limit recommendations. Does the recommendations mean it's implemented? Does that happen in spring and summer, which also looks like it's actually more data gathering and assessment? I'm not seeing implementation there. So that's the number one question.
Bottom bullet point.
Pardon?
Bottom bullet point. I know it's super hard to see.
The company traffic calming installation plan. So that means that's kind of bureaucratic speak. Does that mean we're going to implement everything that we just suggested, and that's going to happen in spring, summer?
Yeah, so when we reassess the speed limits recommendations, if our recommendation is to keep the speed limit the same, then we're not going to change anything.
So,
but if our recommendation is to lower the speed limit, then we will add signs. It just depends on what we
like. We all know recommendations and implementation aren't necessarily following your recommendation, and the implementation is months, years later. So that's my question. It ties in with, and I don't see a good answer to that unless you're saying that every recommendation is going to be implemented immediately.
No, we have very limited staff, so we're gonna have to create a work order, which takes time.
Limited money. Yeah, I understand that, which is why I'm wondering if there are goals or objectives tied in with implementation. Like, well, we're gonna have recommendations by fall, winter, and we're gonna make sure that those recommendations are implemented no later than. So that's one. And I'm just gonna expose my pure ignorance here. Are there timelines that are inherent in AB 43 that dictate things like implementation? For example, what I'm kind of looking at goes back to the first question. Do an assessment, stage A. Do an analysis, stage B. Make recommendations, stage 3, or C, or however my sequence is going, and implement the recommendations no later than or by within 12 months, within 24 months, whatever it might be. I'm just wondering if that's cooked into the law or if it's not cooked into the law.
I don't know the answer to that question, so we would have to get back to you on like if the law has certain deadlines things have to be done by. Yeah, it's just how we're planning on doing it. So all we're saying is this is what our plan is to evaluate it, and then we'll know how many streets are we changing speed limits, right? Because right now I can't say that because I have no idea how many we're going to change, so I can't do my work plan and figure out a deadline.
I got it, but we're talking about the master plan. It's been dragging out. It's our recent letter with the city council pointed out. 10 out of the 19 haven't been. So we can talk about goals, but if there aren't some kind of deadlines for implementation, then we can talk to a blue face. And there are other policies put on by the state. Housing is an example, where there's a big carrot and a big stick for implementation. Housing, and I know the city of San Rafael struggles with that, along with every other city in the state. And both the carrot and stick are being used. So if it can be done in one policy arena, I'm wondering if it's being done here. That's my question. You don't know, that's a good question.
This is different than housing, that it's not a mandate, it's not a requirement, it's just something that gives jurisdictions more flexibility.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any things, or is it just all recommendation stuff? Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and the other thing I guess I wanted to mention was, it's interesting to me that kind of both of these things are happening at similar times, and I'm particularly thinking about a project I'm familiar with where. I mean, I think I saw the word traffic calming. I'm not sure if that means that the city is thinking about a traffic calming program. That's not something we've really talked about, and maybe that would be thought about as part of the bike ped master plan. But I know there were issues with different types of traffic calming strategies because the speeds were too high. And particularly from Caltrans, but that's another issue. But anyway, and because the speeds were high, they were saying, oh, that's going to create an obstacle in the roadway. People are going to hit the obstacle. That's a hazard. We can't do that. But now with the flexibility to reduce the speeds, that could potentially give the city more options as far as employing other strategies. So I think these things have a real opportunity to work together in a way that benefits the city.
Well, David said he could.
We can.
Hi, David.
No, he's answering, he's with the city. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. I'm out of town in a hotel room. Thanks for the question. I'm David Parisi, local traffic engineer, and we provided some of these slides for April to present tonight. She did a great job. It's really important to do a very methodical approach for AB 43. There are no time limits when things need to be done. However, there is a time limit when you can start doing things. So as April mentioned, mid next year, 2024, is the only time we can start doing the safety zones and some of the other activity districts. So the city is pretty much leader in Marin County on taking this on, and there's enough time to implement this in a very methodical process. I think it is important to get all this data back, start taking a look at it, and then figuring out what's going to make sense for not only business activity districts and safety corridors and whatnot, but again, keep in mind, a lot of this cannot be enacted until July 1st of 2024 anyway, but there is no time limit on when things need to be ultimately completed. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else from committee members?
Yeah, I have some comments, not on AB 43, but on a couple of the previous ones that we've talked about. I heard the word policy a few times. Mayor Kate mentioned policy, Nat mentioned policy. Patrick had a question mentioning a complete streets policy. So when you're saying that, so for example, complete streets are bikes and ped master plan. We don't have a policy of that, but the downtown precise plan highlights complete streets pretty extensively. And it basically, my reading of it is like, yeah, we should try to have complete streets, not a policy. And so when you're saying policies, you would change that to, we will do complete streets in every project. Another way to think about that, like one potential policy that we could have for the VPAC could be like daylighting, for example, daylighting intersection, painting some red curves so you can't park right by a crosswalk or something. So that could be a policy that is implemented, but you have thousands of intersections. So, the implementation of that would be, I don't know. So how are you envisioning these policies? Another policy would be like with this repaving. And when we restrike, we will incorporate bike plan elements, that are in here. And so I'm just curious how you all are thinking about dealing with these policies and what you mean when you say that.
I'll jump in the first part because I think that's a really great question. And I think we're both using the word, but I think we actually they have different meanings. So the way that I'm using it is policies are overarching objectives. They get at what is it we're trying to do? We're trying to reduce bike, ped, car interaction. That would be the overarching policy. And so any sort of policies, maybe capital P, small p, that DPW does would go towards that, and we'd have the data to make sure, because what we wouldn't want to do, let's say on some of them, we're reducing a speed limit on streets that it's actually, maybe people don't really speed. Let's say 4th Street, I never see anyone going faster than 40 miles an hour, they're 20. Is that where we want to be spending the energy, the policies, or we want to be doing it elsewhere because we're trying to get this bigger policy? So I'll say from when I use the word, that's what I'm saying, is that way. I want to keep us, when I'm thinking about it is what is the objective we're trying to achieve? And then you all are helping to weigh in on what are the specific strategies that will be implemented. And there can be more than one, there can be multiple, maybe we only do one and there's all the other costs and everything else. But so I just wanted that's kind of the front part, and then I'll turn it over to you all. But that's what I'm using. And I realized as you were saying that, I'm like, oh my God, we're very confusing. So thank you for letting us explain that.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So when I think of policies, I think of standards. Because as of right now, if you look at different intersections, different conditions, depending on whoever the traffic engineer is or who implemented a project, people do things differently. So we need to create certain standards that are in compliance, obviously, but also something that we can follow throughout the whole city. Because obviously we have so many different conditions, elevations, changes, speed, pedestrians are there, and there's all this data that we have out there and things that let's create and manipulate to have a set standard. And if there's other additional policies or improvements that we can do on top of that because of other different conditions, then let's have that in place. Policies, e-bike share program. How are we going to implement that? So there's programs out there that are on their way down, and we need certain policies. What do we allow, rules and guidelines? So it's kind of a mix of both, where it's, okay, programs are starting up, how are we going to implement it? And a big part of it that I'm focused on is the standards that we need. Bike parking. Where are we implementing a lot of that? Currently, we have, certain locations throughout the city, but let's have a map. Let's have a main plan on how we're going to provide it for everyone throughout the whole city. So it's kind of a mix of both.
And it helps when developers come in, because if we have standards that are written, that are adopted, we can have a document to show that the standard is to add bike parking, or the standard is to add XYZ. But if we don't have those officially written and adopted, we can't use that. We can say, yeah, we'd like to, but it's not, it's not written.
So there's a lot of things we need to roll out. So
I have more questions. Sorry. When talking, a couple of bicycle master plan questions, I guess, starting off, when we do this new master plan, how do we as BPAC members contribute? I know that, some consultant is going to be hired to do this. So how do we contribute, and what is our role in that? And I'm thinking of time commitments. Do they want me to sit down with them and list off my grievances with their emails?
I know it was mentioned on the last meeting that we're going to have like an ad hoc committee meeting, 2 personnel that would be on them. For this bike master plan, we're going to have a committee in itself, and this is where BPAC members will join at the table as well to kind of present their concerns and what feedback they're getting from the public.
Another large committee like the Parks and Rec Master Plan Committee kind of things, so with 20 people on it, sort of. Yeah,
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, cool.
Well, and then also I envision certain elements being brought to the entire BPAC for public comment and, helping with outreach and stuff too.
And if I can weigh it, so the other part on the bike plan, master plan, the current one doesn't have a metric that shows for each standard or program, the staff involved, the cost, and then how much you need the grants, right? Because some of these projects, we won't go anywhere without the grants. And so that will be a key part, but I imagine part of that's helping to prioritize. So when that little table is there, if DPW comes to you and says, hey, this is the policy we're trying to meet, we're trying to, get more kids on their bikes or whatever. And these are the 4 or 5 things, this is what it looks like in the table, give your input on those. Like that will be really helpful. Because then you're doing the trade-off. It's not, we can't do it all. So that's where I really see that your role, both who are on the commission or on the committee, as well as the general public, you are all going to have a chance to weigh in on helping to prioritize, because that's ultimately what the plan is going to help us do. Does that help?
Yeah, that rolls into my next question too, because you mentioned, there's obviously some large projects in our master plan, as lots of large projects that we've tackled lots of. But you said you want to incorporate some of these smaller projects. And I think what you're getting at is this ranking that's important. Probably lots like the Parks and Rec master plan did like a ranking of this is what's important and this is how expensive it is, kind of prioritizing like that. You mentioned you want to hit a lot of smaller stuff is what you said. And like a lot of the comments I heard today were about smaller stuff, like this, for example, this I was looking here and April looked over my shoulder. I looked at our master plan and this intersection that everyone has been talking about, it is not even on our list of things right here. Yet it appears to have been at least partially solved in a pilot program fairly easily this afternoon. You know, it's like oh, we can just do that. Is that the kind of small project you're talking about? Like, is that the process you want? Like, obviously the people got very well organized and they came here and I was CC'd on a couple of fantastic emails, you know, long email chains that came through. And is that what you mean by like being able to be nimble with these small projects? Or are you thinking about like even having, you know, we want a $10,000 project in there in the master plan?
I'm not certain about having little projects that are 10,000 or whatnot in there, but if we tackle like, let's just say crosswalk improvements, we could kind of call that out, have certain standards set in place, policies. What do we need to do moving forward with these crosswalks? The traffic department alone, plus CIP and Department of Public Works, we're constantly always looking at the low hanging fruit. What can we improve? Because the way I see it is short-term projects are projects that we can fund already. Like those are, we can fund. The long-term ones are like these $2 million Third Street, like those ones, those are going to be whenever the fund comes. But in the meantime, we're not just tackling the bigger projects as funding comes, but we're also tackling all the low-hanging fruit as well. So I kind of see it more as in, let's set some standards in there and then implement those standards as we work towards knocking out the longer projects.
There are still some, like for instance, the intersection we were talking about. We have, one of our programs is the remove and replace sidewalk, which we have a budget every year to do different projects in the city. We actually did Freitas Parkway sidewalk on one of the sides. We did a bunch of repairs there, and that's what ate up our budget last year. Year before, we did a project out on Point San Pedro. This year, our budget's going towards curb ramps because it's related to a county project. And so the sidewalk improvements in this area near the pilot project, we have that on our list of projects to do, but it's not as cheap as people might think it is. So it would take up our entire budget for this remove and replace sidewalk. So this year we're doing the curb ramps, but it's high on our list to look at as one of our, and that's like a smaller project, but not so small we can just do it. It's like we still have to plan for it.
I guess my question, my thinking is a lot because of all these people who came tonight to talk about an intersection that I had never been to, and that was never appeared on one of my plans. And it sounds like it was at least a fairly satisfactory resolution. But I mean, people are here that they like what they did. But to me, it seems like that process was frustrating for them. You know, like I kept hearing 6 years and no response and bad from the city. And so like I see that as like they got what they want, but sort of a failed process. So does the plan, my question is these small things is like people could come with that and you could be like, yeah, we could do a pilot project. Is that what you're envisioning?
And I mean, that project wasn't just a snap of the fingers. It was on the books when multiple people left, and it was brought back to the top of the list because now we, you know, when people leave, sometimes their pet projects go away, and then we're like, oh wait, no, we said we were going to do that, so that's why we brought back the pilot project. So I mean, we still have to evaluate each of those, and some of these are, you know, complaint based, and we get a lot of traffic comments for bikes, peds, and vehicles, and that goes to our traffic safety committee that meets and talks about the different complaints and priorities and what can we do in-house. And so they vet all of those when they come in. They don't just go into the black hole. They actually go on a list of things that they review to see what we can implement quickly. But that still takes a while.
Cool. That all makes sense. Thank you.
All right, I guess we can go to public comment at this point. We'll start with people in the room.
Do we want to do a time limit on this?
Yes.
Since it's already 8 o'clock.
Yes.
What's
Okay,
your?
So we're
What's your?
It's gonna be 8 up.
You can get a sense of who wants to comment. So
All right. How many minutes do we want?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then there's going to be some online.
Yeah. Okay. I hate to give less than 2 minutes, so but I think we're gonna have to cut people off if you start going beyond that. Patrick?
Thank you. So, we had, everything Tim had discussed with Tom, but we suggested adding to the list of the master pedestrian bike plan, and also for the staff, looking at low hanging fruit, what Phil and Nat had said, what the mayor had mentioned, is to look at things strategically, where find a couple really strategic points in the city that could make a radical difference. And so we have 2 examples of those types of projects. And the first one is the what we call the Crossroads. And the Crossroads, what it does is it links the Cross Marin Bike Trail with the North-South Greenway, provides a bike path to Davidson. And so what it does is it makes the whole area more bicycle pedestrian friendly and porous for the neighborhood kids to get to the school and people to use the great project that's being put up on 3rd Street and with the bike pathway and Cross Marin Trail down to San Selmo. And what we're asking you to do is to look at it holistically, look at it strategically. And if you look at this, the top page of this, what that is, you have some class 4s, you can go out there, that's paved plastic, you can do those things. And there's some, you have the Davidson route in your CIP program, Davidson Pathways, or the bike project in for Davidson for that. And no one knows exactly what it means and stuff, but this is a really great place to get kids safely from all around neighborhoods to that place. And then the other segment that's coming in, if you look at the left-hand side, that's the Cross Marin Bikeway again. What that would do is anchor all the work that's been done on 3rd Street. So it's strategically related to the millions of dollars spent on 3rd Street, bringing it into the North-South Greenway, safe routes to schools, and you can bite off a little bit at a time. Look for the grants as they come, do the class 4s when you have the opportunity, and then get some, when we get some of these grants or apply for the grants, go for those grants. So this is just one we consider to be one of the great, strategic areas to invest in all the things you've been talking about tonight. Matthew, you want to follow up on another one?
I am. So the rest of your packet is the Civic Center Multimodal Mobility Hub. Now, the Transportation Authority of Marin is about to start the planning process for mobility hubs, ferry terminals in Marin. And we've already done a lot of the conceptual planning for the Civic Center hub. And so you'll find engineering drawings and renderings in your packet here. Some of these pieces are already there. The North-South Greenway, the city is already going after RCN grants for the Fellow Meadows pathway, which is absolutely wonderful. Northgate Town Square, the developers have promised to pay for the possibility of but the city, the design process and supported with this EIR for the state. And for anyone in this room who has influence on the smart board, please use your influence and pick up on the east side of the freeway, because right now the only place to park at the Civic Center station is on dead end Marydale Road. It's not a good place for parking. We need that space for a good community green pathway, Marydale, North San Rafael Promenade. So put that parking on the east side of the freeway where it's visible, where everyone will be able to see it, where it will be an advertisement for smart and increased smart ridership. And also put in bike share for Northgate Town Square, bike share for Embassy Suites, bike share for the Civic Center. And what you will have is a really great integrated network system that also connects to the Freitas Roundabout project. And so I'll leave the rest of the time for other people. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'd like to do 2 things. One, I really would love if you could yield me 1 minute on the agenda item that I couldn't speak on, this most recent one, and then the public comment. So first off, for the agenda item that was just talked about, by the way, my name is Dave Rhodes. I'm the co-chair of Walk Bike Center Fell, for those of you who don't know me. But I want to talk about this issue of the policy versus standard. I think this is really important. I think policy gives the city, if we establish a policy that's like adopted by council, and therefore adopted for the city policy to implement and guide, then that gives council, that gives the staff, it gives the committees the political bandwidth and the wherewithal to actually start to implement, say, okay, we're gonna do daylighting. That's a part of our pedestrian safety policy. Maybe that's Vision Zero, maybe that's the streets policy, whatever. Then you can just do it. And if people start to say, but I want to park my car there. Well, we're doing it because we agreed upon this policy. I think that's really important. It gives the council this this bandwidth and freedom to do that. And I think that's so important. We're here to support that. And I think the BPAC master plan is obviously super important. There's already awesome stuff in it. I'm a little bit concerned that it's going to take another 18 months to do just to get a plan done. Can we think about and consider actually reducing some of that scope, maybe saving some money at the same time, and revising the existing plan, reprioritizing, getting some high-level cost estimates, and executing. And then let's go into start executing. I think plans are important. We've got a pretty good plan already. Let's figure out how to do a V1.5 for the next 5 years, and then go. I also am really encouraged to hear that AB 43 is working on a parallel program. So is that 2 minutes?
That was 2.
Okay, I'll wrap up that and I'll go into my my overall, the non-agenda items, public comment. And that's just really thank the BPAC for your service. And Mayor Kate, thank you so much for coming. And of course, I didn't know, April, that you'd be here. Thank you for you and your time and your staff's time tonight. We're excited for the last minute news today of the slip lane closure on Fridas. And we do thank DPW Councilmember Kurtz and Mayor Kate for seeing that. It's interesting to hear that it's a pilot project. We want to help give you the bandwidth to make sure that remains permanent. I am here to express some of our frustration at the common and frequent response by council to quote, go to BPAC, especially when our community members and children are being killed or injured. And we have stated climate action, wellness, and traffic goals that can be achieved through implementing improving the walking and biking experience here. One thing about BPAC is that BPAC works well for DPW to get feedback, at least that's my perspective. You tell me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, about specific capital projects, but not too much for bigger picture programs and policies that I talked about that require political leadership, input, and your will, and all of it. And we appreciate when the council takes action, like today, but the reality is that BPAC doesn't have authority. It's an advisory committee to council. And this committee only meets 6 times per year. If we're lucky, some meetings get canceled. And that's maximum 12 hours per year. We're watching the clock click down to right now. And council meets 20 times per year. Council decides priorities and you have the political authority. So that's really important. And we want to keep that in mind. We think council and BPAC's heart's in the right place. We want to help you move faster. We're here to give you coverage so you can feel confident that you're doing the right thing. We all are here to make this place better. And it's already great. We want to make it even better. We ask you to keep taking our recommendations and feedback seriously. We want to adopt policies, shape staff priority, hopefully get you some more staff to bring on, and continue consulting with feedback and making meaningful progress towards making San Rafael a safer and better place to walk or ride every day, everywhere. And thanks for listening to us and folks who came tonight and my 4 minutes that I got. So thank you.
Yes.
My name is Allie. I commute mainly by bike or by walking. I'm a teacher in the school district, and I'm also a parent of 2 kids. San Rafael is it was ranked the most dangerous city compared to other towns our size, according to the California Office of Traffic Safety Rankings. So we can talk about numbers, but it's the stories that matter. My son was biking to Davidson and witnessed a pedestrian get hit and killed there, and that was super traumatic for our family. When I was teaching at Sun Valley, I witnessed 2 children, one right by Andy's Market and another in front of our school, get hit. And it was only then, when my son saw someone dead with blood on the street, then they put in the stops. It was only then that Andy's Market happened to have the what are they called? The bollards. Yeah, and then the red of no parking so people could see. And so my goal, the reason why I'm here is I want you to be proactive and not reactive. And it is scary. My husband kisses me before I leave for work because I am biking, because he knows I might not come home. He thinks it's super unsafe and he does not want me biking. And so I just think it's really important, like, why are we here? It's because literally people die, like, we shouldn't have to wait until that happens to make change. So that's my.
Thank you.
Mulligan, I'm a Glenwood resident, by way of Brooklyn for 2 years here in San Rafael. And I'd like to talk about the B Street two-way conversion. A subcommittee of BPAC met city staff for a walk audit of B Street, a pedestrian priority corridor. We understand there was a positive discussion that proved fruitful in identifying swift, cost-effective solutions to immediately improve the safety and experience for pedestrians. Creative ideas like planter boxes with flowers to provide buffer, bike racks, and painted curbs to protect walkers downtown. The entire process epitomized a productive exchange of ideas. The group was in agreement that something should be done and it could be done quickly and easily with an immediate effect. Now, more than a half a year later, B Street is finally going to be restriped for two-way travel. None of the pedestrian-oriented improvements or the ideas that we shared are going to be implemented at that time. The feedback given, the vision shared, and the time spent in meetings, it's come to naught. This is profoundly disappointing. I understand that the restriping B Street now does not preclude future projects and improvements. I know that given more time and more money, something could possibly be done in the future to improve the safety and experience of pedestrians on this new corridor. But our city plans tell us this project is important. Everyone in this room agrees that this project is important. A collaborative effort gave rise to inventive, budget-friendly solutions that could be promptly implemented, and we're not doing any of it. So what are we waiting for?
Thank you. Anyone else here?
Behind you. You've just totally changed everything that I was gonna say, but one of them is important, is that I think you need to include residents in the things that you're doing, because it seems that you've got public works, police, and no people that actually use your streets, other than pedestrians and bicyclists, which is what this is. In terms of B Street, which I am commenting on, you've got C and D Street that you've changed. I noticed that when I go down C or D Street, I actually turn left onto First Street because I refuse to turn onto Third Street or Second Street, because you can't. Okay, I mean, I don't care how many lanes you put in there, you cannot get through more than one person on that light. I'm in a Gerstle Park Neighborhood Association meeting and I hear these mothers saying, we need to have a crossing guard at First Street. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're putting this all together. Of course, it's now obstructing First Street. What people do is they turn on First Street, they go up B Street. If you change B Street into two ways and you're not paying attention to this, because I can't imagine anybody's really paying attention to this. Okay, that's going to totally disaster for your C and D Street working now. So I just want people to be aware of that. I don't know anybody who I spoke to who's for that. I'm very surprised that you had a group of people that actually did that, because I didn't know about it as a resident, and I use that street all the time. So that's my 1.5 minutes. And I'm back. I'll get credit for this.
Anyone else here in the room? Okay, online. Some people put their hands up.
Leo Lazar.
Hi again. I think my major question I wanted to ask was, what does a street mean, and what does a road mean? This is not just I'm not trying to be pedantic here, but my point here is to clearly ask what defines a street and what defines a road. Because as far as I'm concerned, there is no difference here. Streets and roads are exactly the same. They're designed the same way. They're designed to be relatively wide and allow for cars to go relatively fast. Which, if you're trying to get from one place to another, that's cool. Until you realize that at any speeds over 20 miles an hour, you're exponentially increasing the chance that if you hit someone, you're going to get them killed. And on top of that, putting cars in front of people on these streets is not just a danger, it's also counterproductive to the prosperity of the town in question. More people can access shops and stores and actually do their shopping comfortably than will ever be possible by allowing people to put out a parking lot and then driving there. It's been a proven fact, and as demonstrated in the Netherlands and other places that have introduced this, that is a positive good for cars to be removed from streets. There are streets where this would be absolutely excellent to do so. The main streets like 4th Street and in San Anselmo, the main San Anselmo streets should not have cars on them. They just don't belong there. They are obstructing where pedestrians could be and are counterproductive. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Next.
Next person, William Bacon.
Mayor Kate, city staff, and members of the BPAC. My name is Bill Bacon. I'm a homeowner in Terra Linda and a young parent of a 4-month-old daughter. So thank you for your service to our community and for working to make our community a better place to live and work. I would like to thank city staff for discussing their forthcoming 3-year paving plan. I think this is a very positive first step in improving the city's asset management approach. And I strongly encourage the city staff to engage with the public in a meaningful way before going to city council to award construction contracts. This really allows our community to maximize the use of our limited staff and financial resources and ensure that we're really getting the best bang for our investment in our communities. Many of our neighborhoods, including the Canal and Terra Linda, were developed after the Second World War at a time when cars were ascendant. And the city council has, in my view, appropriately identified reducing climate GHG emissions as an important part of the city's priorities. And given that transportation has been identified as the single largest source of emissions in San Rafael, we really have to be doing everything we can as a community to get people out of cars. And by doing that, we need to make our city safer for people walking and biking, especially people who live, work, or go to school or seek medical care in equity priority communities. Places like the Canal and parts of Terra Linda that are identified by the Association of Bay Area Governments and Metropolitan Transportation Commission as equity priority communities. It also happens to be places where most of our city's housing growth is being focused, really need to be places where the council focuses its attention on making sure that places that are accepting new residents to our city are the safest they can be for people walking and biking. So I appreciate your time this evening and thank you for your service again. And I look forward to partnering with the city and helping to support great projects. And thank you for the pilot today on Freitas Parkway. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. Last hand up, Kurt.
Hi, I was there earlier, trying to run, but in terms of the pilot program, I just have a lot of questions because the barricades took all of us by surprise. We had no idea it was coming. And I think a lot of people in the community are going to get tired of looking at these orange jersey barriers. So can anyone answer what the plan is to put in permanent curbing, sidewalks, and remove the eyesores of the jersey barriers? Because right now we're flying blind. There was no communication regarding this pilot program, and it just seems like we're in the dark and the city's flying by the seat of its pants. Although I do want to say I appreciate that the pilot program was initiated because it has been a 6-year effort that I started back in 2017 to get this going. So I am very thankful, but I just want to know what the game plan is.
Thank you, and I guess that's our last comment. April, can you or someone else respond to that? It sounds like a lot of people are interested in that project. Was any time frame for the pilot?
We haven't discussed what the time frame is. Typically, 6 months, you actually get to see, people's behaviors and we can gather feedback, but we haven't set a time frame yet.
Okay. Is that something that would be posted on the website, like where people could go for information, or is there some way people can stay in the loop?
Yeah, we can create a website or put it on. We'll try to figure out how to put it on one of our websites.
QR code on one of those there.
Yeah, we can do that too.
But
can just.
So hopefully people will have information going forward.
Yeah, and a bigger project would be ranked against all other CIP projects in the city. So
thanks. Okay, and Mark reminded me that I neglected to go back and get the minutes approved from the last meeting, so I did want to backtrack a little bit before we close up. And so were there any comments from members about the minutes or?
Another wonderful meeting minutes. You know, we had talked about that the month before about the importance of good meeting. Yes, those were fantastic. I agree. 2 in a row.
Okay,
Thank you. So I think that was you. Thank you for putting.
I'll second. Approved, meeting minutes are approved. Okay, I guess we have future agenda items were mentioned earlier, and we'll, thank you, appreciate all the interest and everyone coming out tonight. It's great to have such a good turnout and hope to have a lot of continued involvement as we go forward with the Bike Ped Master Plan.
And those residents just like